Your daughter wants to destroy you legally." Those 6 words struck me like a knife to the heart as I was making breakfast for my grandchildren. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would. And if, for a second, this feels familiar to you, I just ask that you leave a like and subscribe. It will help me to keep unburdening my soul. My name is Carol Hope Miller. I am 67 years old, and my entire life has been one of routines. Every morning at 6 o'clock sharp, I wake up in my small apartment in the historic King William district of San Antonio, the same apartment where I've lived for the last 40 years, where I raised my 3 children, where I cared for my husband until his last breath 2 years ago. My hands, marked by the bluish veins that betray my age, move automatically, a pot of strong coffee on the gas stove, toast popping up from the toaster, scrambled eggs. All for Sandra, my eldest daughter, and her 2 little ones, Sebastian and Valerie, age 7 and 9. Sandra came to live with me after her divorce. "Just until I get back on my feet, Mom," she had told me with that smile I'd known since she was a little girl with long braids. That was 3 years ago. 3 years in which my 2-bedroom apartment became her refuge, my retirement savings became her support system, and my entire life was reorganized around her needs and those of my grandchildren. That Tuesday morning, as the aroma of coffee filled the kitchen and the kids scurried down the hall getting ready for school, my cell phone buzzed. A text message from my lawyer, Michael Harrison, the same one who helped me with the paperwork when Robert, my husband, passed away. "Carol, I need to see you urgently. It's about Sandra. Don't do anything until we talk." The letters blurred before my eyes. I dropped the wooden spoon I was using to stir the eggs. The clatter echoed in the kitchen like a funeral bell. My legs, already weak from the arthritis that has plagued me for 5 years, trembled until I had to lean against the sink. "What's wrong, Grandma?" Sebastian asked, appearing in the kitchen with his Lincoln Elementary School uniform half-buttoned. "You look really pale." I forced a smile. The same smile I had perfected over decades of silent sacrifices. "Nothing, sweetie. Go eat your breakfast or you'll be late for school." But inside, something had broken. An imperceptible crack, like the ones that appear in old walls after an earthquake. It doesn't hurt at the moment, but you know something fundamental has changed forever. Sandra appeared in the kitchen 20 minutes later, already dressed for her job at a boutique downtown. She was wearing the blue blouse I had bought her last month with my pension, the new shoes she had paid for with the savings I kept for medical emergencies. Her brown hair, freshly cut at an expensive salon in the Pearl District, shone under the kitchen's fluorescent light. "Morning, Mom," she said without looking up from her phone, where she was typing furiously. "Are the kids ready?" "Yes, honey. They've had breakfast and are brushing their teeth." She kept her eyes on her phone, as if I were a piece of furniture, as if my 67 years of existence had been reduced to being an unpaid housekeeper in my own home. "Hey, Mom," she said, still not looking up. "I need you to deposit $300 for me for the weekend. I'm going to South Padre Island with my friends from the office. You know, I need to de-stress a little. $300. Nearly half of my monthly Social Security check. The same amount she had asked for last month for an emergency she never explained. And the month before that, for some courses she needed to take. And the one before that, to fix the car that had been in the same shop for 6 months. "Sandra, honey," I began, my voice trembling. "This week is really tight. I have to pay the electricity, the gas, the groceries for the kids." For the first time that morning, she looked up from her phone. Her eyes, which once looked at me with affection, now held a coldness that chilled me to the bone. "Oh, Mom, don't be so dramatic. You don't spend money on anything. You just sit here in the house watching your soap operas. I'm the one who works, who provides for my children, who—" She stopped. But in that silence was everything she didn't say. "Who provides for you, too, you useless old woman?" The kids came running into the kitchen, their backpacks on and their cheeks flushed from rushing. "Let's go, Mom!" Valerie shouted. "The bell is about to ring." Sandra stood up, grabbed her keys from the Fiestaware fruit bowl that had belonged to my grandmother, and headed for the door. "Oh, and Mom," she said without turning around. "I'll be late tonight. I have an appointment after work. The kids will have dinner here with you, right?" It wasn't a question. It was an order disguised as a request, like all the ones she had given me for the past 3 years. Of course, honey. I'll be waiting for them. The door closed with a sharp click. The apartment sank into a silence that seemed to scream of my loneliness. I stood in the middle of the kitchen, surrounded by dirty dishes and the fading aroma of coffee that no one had finished drinking. It was then that I reread the message from my lawyer. The words danced before my tired eyes, but their meaning became clearer and more terrifying. What had he discovered about Sandra? What had my daughter done, the girl I had held in my arms through fevers, whom I had taught to walk holding her hands in this very hallway, for whom I had worked double shifts cleaning offices when I was young, so she would never lack for anything? I walked to my bedroom with slow, deliberate steps. Each plank of the wooden floor creaked under my feet like an ancestral lament. On the nightstand, next to the photograph of Robert on our wedding day 45 years ago, was the pearl rosary my mother had given me for my 15th birthday. I took it in my hands and, for the first time in a long time, I didn't know what to pray for. The apartment felt different that day. The peach-colored walls I had painted with such care seemed duller. The furniture I had bought with such effort looked worn, old, out of place. Even the crucifix hanging over the entrance, blessed by Father Mike from St. Joseph's Parish, seemed to watch me with infinite sadness. I grabbed my brown leather purse, the same one I'd used for 10 years, and left for Mr. Harrison's office. As I waited for the bus on the corner of Commerce Street, I watched the people passing by. Entire families, young mothers with their children, elderly couples holding hands. They all seemed to have a place in the world. Everyone except me. The message was still there, on my phone screen, waiting for a reply I didn't know how to give. It's about Sandra. What could be so serious that my own lawyer would warn me not to do anything until we talked? Deep in my heart, a little voice that had been whispering for months finally found the words I had refused to hear. Your own daughter is using you, Carol. And this might be just the beginning. Mr. Harrison's office smelled of old tobacco and yellowed paper. His walls were covered with diplomas and graduation photos dating back to the 80s. I sat in the cracked leather chair across from his dark wooden desk, my hands trembling on my purse. Carol, what I'm about to tell you is very serious, Michael began, adjusting the glasses that always slid down his nose. Sandra has been using your personal information to apply for loans. 3 different ones, for a total of $25,000. The blood froze in my veins. $25,000. A fortune I had never seen all at once in my entire life. But that's not all, he continued, pulling a manila folder from his filing cabinet. She also forged your signature to access the savings account Robert left behind. The one you had for medical emergencies. Robert. My Robert, who had worked for 30 years as a mechanic at Mr. Aurelio's garage so we would never want for anything. Who had saved dollar by dollar, sacrificing his cigarettes and his Sunday beer to create that emergency fund. Just in case one of us gets sick, Carol, he would say as he counted wrinkled bills on the kitchen table. How much? I asked in a threat of a voice. $10,000. All of it. She took it all 6 months ago. I closed my eyes and saw myself at 25, pregnant with Sandra, working at Mrs. Esperanza's bakery from 5 in the morning until 8 at night. My hands were covered in calluses from the hot ovens, but I was there, day after day, so my daughter could have milk, diapers, medicine when she had a fever. I saw myself holding her in my arms at 2 years old, when she got pneumonia and the doctor at the public clinic sent us to the county hospital. 3 sleepless nights, sitting in a plastic chair by her bed, praying to the Virgin Mary not to take her from me. Robert sold his bicycle, the only one he ever owned, to pay for the medications the hospital didn't cover. You're still here, my baby, I would whisper, stroking her feverish hair. Mommy will never leave you alone. Never. That word echoed in my head like a cruel joke from fate. Carol, are you listening to me? The lawyer's voice brought me back to the present. Yes, I'm sorry. It's just, I can't believe it. There's more. Sandra has also been collecting your Social Security checks directly. She convinced the bank that you authorize her to manage your accounts because you have memory problems. Memory problems. as if my 67 years had automatically turned me into an incapable old woman, as if decades of experience, of pain, of accumulated wisdom were just symptoms of mental decline. I remembered the first time Sandra asked for my help with her divorce papers. "Mom, I need you to come with me to the bank to do some paperwork. You just have to sign here," she had said, pointing to documents I couldn't understand because the print was too small and I had left my glasses at home. "I trust you, honey," I told her as I put my signature in 3 different places. Trust. Another word that now tasted of betrayal. "Mr. Harrison," I said, my voice breaking, "what can I do? First, I need you to tell me everything, from the beginning. Every loan she asked you for, every time you signed something, every strange situation you noticed." And then the floodgates of my memory opened. I told him about the $50 I gave her every week for gas. Even though her car had been broken down for months. The $100 a month for the kids' daycare, when I was the one who watched them every afternoon. The $200 for medical emergencies when Valerie got the flu. But I never saw a prescription or medicine. I told him about the times she came home with bags of new clothes, shoes that cost more than my entire Social Security check, French perfumes she bought because they were on sale. Meanwhile, I was wearing the same 3 blouses I had bought at a discount store 2 years ago. My granddaughter Valerie once asked me why I didn't have nice clothes like her mom. I told the lawyer, feeling my voice crack. I told her I was old now, that I didn't need so many things. But the truth is, I did need them. I needed new shoes because mine had worn out soles and my feet hurt after walking to the market. I needed a coat because the only one I had was torn at the sleeve, and I had mended it with thread that wasn't the same color. I needed to go to the dentist because a tooth had been aching for months, but every time I saved enough money for the appointment, Sandra would appear with a new emergency. Once, I continued, I found some papers in her purse when I was helping her look for her car keys. They were for a house in Alamo Heights, a very expensive house with a garden and a pool. I asked her what it was, and she said she was just looking at options for the future. The lawyer took notes in his yellow legal pad. His eyes, behind thick glasses, reflected a mix of professionalism and pity that hurt me more than all of Sandra's lies combined. "Has she ever told you that you're sick? That you have memory problems or anything like that?" "Yes," I replied immediately. "When I forget little things, like where I put my keys or if I've taken my blood pressure pills, she says, 'See, Mom, that's why you need me to take care of your things.' Or when I don't understand something about the bank or the internet, she tells me, 'Oh, Mom, you're too old for all this modern stuff.'" Each comment had been like a drop of acid on my self-esteem. Drop by drop, day by day, until it burned a hole so deep that I had started to doubt my own mental capacity. "Carol, I want you to understand something very important," Michael said, leaning forward. "You are not crazy. You are not senile. You are the victim of financial and emotional abuse. Abuse." The word fell between us like a stone in still water. It created ripples that reached the darkest corners of my soul, illuminating truths I had preferred to keep in the shadows. "But she's my daughter," I whispered. "I love her. I would give my life for her." "I know. And that's precisely why she was able to take advantage of you." I left the office with my legs shaking and my heart in pieces. The midday sun beat down on the old streets of downtown. I walked aimlessly until I reached Main Plaza, where I sat on a bench under the palm trees, watching families stroll by with their children. An elderly couple passed in front of me, holding hands. The man used a cane, and she walked slowly, but they smiled at each other with a complicity that only shared years can bring. I wondered if Robert and I would have reached that age together, if we would have walked these same streets like that, enjoying our grandchildren without the burden of lies and betrayal. In my purse, my phone vibrated. A message from Sandra. "Mom, they're going to cut off the power if you don't pay today. I need you to go to the bank." I stared at the message for a long time. For the first time in 3 years, I didn't immediately rush to solve her problem. For the first time, I wondered if it was really my problem to solve. A local musician on the corner of the plaza began to play "Happy Birthday" for a little girl celebrating. Her family surrounded her, singing joyfully as she blew out the candles on her cake. The scene transported me to Sandra's birthdays when she was little, when I would bake her favorite chocolate cakes and organize parties with the few dollars we could afford. "Are you happy, honey?" I would ask her each year as I helped her blow out the candles. "Yes, Mommy. You're the best mom in the world. The best mom in the world." At what point had that little girl who hugged me so tightly turned into the woman who now saw me as a walking ATM? My phone vibrated again. Another message. "Mom, answer me. It's urgent." This time, I put the phone in my purse without responding. I needed time to think, to process, to decide if the woman who had sacrificed her youth, her health, and her dreams for her children finally deserved to set some boundaries. In the distance, the bells of the cathedral began to toll 3 in the afternoon. It was the time I would normally be preparing lunch for when Sandra got home from work. But today, for the first time in 3 years, Carol Hope Miller didn't rush home to meet her daughter's expectations. Today, she stayed on that bench, watching life go by and wondering when she had stopped living her own. The cathedral clock showed 6:30 when I left Michael Harrison's office, my head spinning as if I had fallen into a deep well with no way out. The city carried on as usual. Buses crammed with people, flower vendors arranging their bouquets on the corner, children running with their backpacks swinging. Everything was normal, except me. I felt broken, betrayed, as if someone had taken my heart in their hands and squeezed it dry. I replayed the lawyer's words over and over. "Sandra forged your signature. Sandra emptied your account. Sandra is building a legal case to have you declared incompetent." A metallic taste filled my mouth, as if I had bitten into blood. I walked slowly to the bus stop, afraid my legs wouldn't hold me, clutching my purse to my chest as if it were the only thing I had left. On the way home, images of Sandra as a child flooded my mind. I remembered her first school uniform, the braids I used to do for her before taking her to elementary school, her small hand gripping mine as we crossed the avenue. I remembered the nights she would wake up crying from nightmares, and I would run to her bed, holding her tight until she fell back asleep. How could that child have become the woman who now sought to legally destroy me? The bus filled with street vendors selling candy, pens, and cheap phone chargers. I didn't hear them. I only saw the words the lawyer had shown me. Documents with my name, my forged signature, amounts I would never have requested. It was like seeing my life written in a language I didn't recognize, as if someone had stolen my identity to build a version of me that didn't exist. When I got to the apartment, the kids were already home from school. Sebastian was sprawled on the couch watching cartoons, and Valerie was doing her homework at the kitchen table. They greeted me with hugs, suspecting nothing. I smiled at them, as always, because it wasn't their fault. But inside, I felt a huge lump tightening my throat. "Grandma, can you help me with my division?" Valerie asked. I sat beside her and tried to concentrate, but the numbers jumbled in my head. Every time I looked at her notebook, I saw the figures of the debt Sandra had created in my name. 8,000, 12,000, 5,000, more. They were like invisible chains tying me to a prison I hadn't chosen. When Sandra arrived that night, her face was illuminated by perfect makeup and the expensive scent of an imported perfume. She gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, like someone fulfilling an obligation, and went to her room without asking how I was or what I had done all day. I watched her take off her heels in the hallway and thought, is it possible that the daughter I raised with so much effort is the same woman who now wants to have me declared incompetent? Dinner was silent. Only the children talked, telling me about their day at school. Sandra didn't look up from her phone. I barely touched the soup I had made. I was afraid to open my mouth, afraid all the pain I was carrying would pour out. That night, after everyone was asleep, I sat alone in the dark living room. I took the rosary I always kept in a drawer and began to pray, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, memories came. Memories of my mother telling me when I was young, "Be careful, Carol. Children are raised with love, but also with boundaries. If not, one day you won't know when they stopped respecting you." I never wanted to listen to her. I thought a mother's love should be unconditional, that boundaries were selfish. Now I understood what she had tried to warn me about. Tears streamed down my cheeks. I wasn't just crying for the lost money. I was crying for the years of blind trust, for the sincere hugs that no longer existed, for the family that was slipping through my fingers. I was crying because I knew that if I didn't do something, Sandra would destroy everything that was left of my life. The next day, I woke up determined to talk to her directly. As I made breakfast, I mentally rehearsed what I would say, that I knew everything, that I had seen the proof, that she couldn't keep abusing me. But when Sandra came out of her room, phone in hand and sunglasses ready, I was speechless. My lips trembled, my hands grew sweaty, and the words got stuck in my throat. She asked me for another $200 for the water bill, and I, as always, nodded silently. After she left, I felt like the most cowardly woman in the world. I hadn't been able to confront her, not even to say a single word, and it was then that I understood the battle wasn't just against her, but against myself, against the fear that paralyzed me, against the guilt that made me accept humiliation just so I wouldn't lose her. That day I called Mr. Harrison again. I told him I hadn't been able to say anything, that my mind had gone blank. He sighed on the other end of the line and told me something I'll never forget. Carol, a mother's love doesn't mean letting yourself be destroyed. Love also knows how to set boundaries. If you don't, she won't stop. His words were a reality check. I knew he was right. And even though it hurt to my very core, I understood that I had to protect myself, because if I didn't, no one else would. That night, as I watched my grandchildren sleep, I made a silent promise. I would not let Sandra steal my dignity. I may have lost money, trust, and years of peace, but I was not going to lose what little I had left of myself. I fell asleep with that decision in my heart, never imagining that the worst was yet to come. The next day, I woke up earlier than usual. The silence of the apartment was heavy, broken only by the sound of trucks passing on the avenue. I walked to the kitchen with slow steps, dragging my slippers, as if every movement cost me the little energy I had left. I put water on to boil for coffee but didn't even feel like making it. I just stared at the steam rising from the pot, thinking about everything the lawyer had told me and what I still didn't dare to face. Sandra came out of her room in a hurry, wearing a new dress I had never seen, probably bought with my savings. She didn't even greet me. She just checked her phone while saying out loud that she had an important meeting. She never looked me in the eye. She just left her car keys on the table and yelled at the kids to hurry up. I remained silent, my heart squeezed tight and a feeling of alienation I couldn't shake. When they finally left, I sat at the kitchen table with an old notebook and a pen. I felt it was time to write everything down. Every dollar I had given Sandra, every lie she had told me, every moment she had abused my trust. Mr. Harrison had asked me to, and I knew that if I didn't put it in writing, I would forget important details. As I wrote, tears fell onto the pages, creating smudges that blurred some of the words. It was painful to relive it all, but also necessary. I spent more than 3 hours filling that notebook. I remembered the time she asked for $1,000 for an urgent medical treatment that never existed. The time she made me sign a document at the bank saying it was for her divorce, and it turned out to be the authorization to manage my accounts. I even remembered small humiliations. When she told her friends in front of me that I was getting senile because I didn't understand how an app worked, or when she screamed that I was useless after I forgot to take out the trash one day. When I finished, I closed the notebook and stared at the crucifix on the wall. I asked God for strength for what was coming, because deep down, I knew the worst was yet to happen. In the afternoon, Sandra returned earlier than usual. She was agitated, her face tense and her lips pressed into a thin line. As soon as she walked in, she gave me a look that froze my blood. "Mom, I need to talk to you," she said, tossing her purse onto the couch. I felt my legs tremble, but I remained standing. "What is it, honey?" She crossed her arms and looked at me with that cold gaze that was now so familiar. "We can't go on like this. I've been talking to a lawyer and—" She paused, as if to gauge my reaction. "I think it's best if you sign a power of attorney so I can manage everything. Your accounts, your apartment, your things." A chill ran down my spine. Mr. Harrison's voice echoed in my head. "Sandra is building a case to have you declared incompetent." "A power of attorney?" I asked, feigning naivety. "Yes, Mom. Don't take it the wrong way, but you're getting older. You forget things. You get tired. You can't handle everything anymore. I'll make sure you have everything you need. I just need your signature." Rage and sadness swirled inside me like a vortex. For the first time in a long time, I didn't bow my head. No, Sandra, I'm not signing anything. Her eyes widened in surprise, as if she hadn't expected that answer. Then her face hardened. What do you mean, no? It's for your own good. No, honey, it's for yours, and I'm not going to allow it anymore. For a moment, there was silence. A heavy, tense silence, broken only by the ticking of the clock on the wall. Then, Sandra slammed her hand on the table and shouted, "You're so ungrateful. After everything I do for you, you repay me with distrust." Her shouting brought the children out of their rooms, frightened. Valerie wrapped her arms around my waist and asked what was happening. I stroked her hair, trying to calm her, as Sandra dragged them toward the hallway. "Go to your room, now," she ordered. The kids ran off, tears in their eyes. I was left alone with my daughter, feeling a part of me break forever. Sandra approached slowly, her face contorted. "You know what, Mom? If you don't give me that power of attorney, I'll prove that you're no longer capable of taking care of yourself. I'll present evidence. I'll say everything I've had to do for you. And believe me, the law will side with me." I looked her straight in the eye. I had no fear left, only immense sadness. "Do whatever you want, Sandra, but I'm not signing anything." She turned and locked herself in her room, slamming the door hard. I stood in the living room trembling, but with a new certainty in my heart. I had taken the first step. I had said no. I couldn't sleep that night. I could hear Sandra talking on the phone in a low voice, surely with the lawyer who was advising her. Her words were like knives piercing my soul. "She's losing her memory. She can't manage on her own. I have proof." I felt my world collapsing, but I also knew I couldn't just stand by. At dawn, I took the notebook where I had written everything and went to Mr. Harrison's office. I handed him every page with trembling hands. He read them patiently and said, "Carol, with this, we can build a solid defense. But I need you to be willing to fight, even if it means confronting Sandra directly." I nodded silently, tears in my eyes, because even though it hurt me to my soul, I knew it was necessary. I wasn't just defending my assets anymore. I was defending my dignity, my life, what little was left of myself. When I returned home, the children greeted me with hugs. They didn't understand what was happening, but they could feel the tense atmosphere. I held them tight, silently promising myself that I would not let them lose their grandmother to their mother's ambitions. That afternoon, while Sandra was out, I sat with Sebastian and Valerie for a snack. They told me they had drawn a picture of their family at school. Sebastian showed me his. He had drawn me in the center, holding a huge heart. "Because you always take care of us, Grandma," he said, with the innocence only children have. I couldn't hold back my tears. I realized that even if Sandra tried to take everything from me, there was one thing she could never take away: the sincere love of my grandchildren. And that gave me the strength to keep going, even though I knew the worst was yet to come. The following days turned into a tense routine, as if everyone in the apartment were walking on broken glass. Sandra no longer spoke to me with any kindness. In fact, she hardly spoke to me at all. The children noticed. Valerie started hugging me tighter before bed, and Sebastian would ask me not to go out alone, as if he sensed something bad was about to happen. In their own way, they were trying to protect me. Sandra left early and came back later and later. She gave no explanations, no indication of where she was going. Sometimes she smelled of alcohol, other times of a different perfume. She no longer bothered to pretend she had been at work. She would lock herself in her room and talk on the phone in low tones, murmuring things like, "Yes, it's ready," or, "As soon as she signs, we'll close the deal." I kept visiting Mr. Harrison. Each time we spoke, he explained the legal situation more clearly. Sandra was gathering old medical records, bank statements, even statements from neighbors she was manipulating to say I was no longer functional. She was building her case like someone setting a stage, with scenery, actors, and a false script. "Carol," he told me one afternoon, "I have to be honest with you. If she manages to present this documentation to a judge, she can request legal guardianship over you, not just of your assets. Of you." The words landed like lead weights. The idea that my own daughter sought to declare me incompetent, to control me like an old piece of furniture, was more than a betrayal. It was an emotional amputation. That night, after putting the children to bed, I locked myself in my room and pulled an old shoebox from the closet. Inside were the most important papers I had saved for decades. My marriage certificate with Robert, the deed to the apartment, medical records, bank statements, even postcards from Sandra when she was a teenager. I read them one by one, as if searching for a sign, an answer, something to tell me how a mother gets to this point. Among the papers, I found a letter Sandra had written to me when she was 18, when she moved in with her first boyfriend. It said she loved me, that I was her role model, that she would never let anyone disrespect me. The handwriting was hers, but the person who wrote it no longer existed. 2 weeks passed. I remained silent, but inside, I was building a fortress. I started keeping copies of everything that arrived in my name, took photos of my pill organizers with dates, and recorded short videos showing I could cook, clean, and go to the bank by myself. Mr. Harrison had asked me to document everything, and I did. Then, the day I dreaded arrived. It was a Friday. The kids were at school and I was home alone, folding laundry. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. I went to open it and found 2 people, a young woman holding a clipboard and a man in a suit. "Mrs. Carol Miller?" she asked. "Yes, that's me. We're from the family court. We're here to notify you that your daughter, Sandra Miller, has filed for an evaluation of legal capacity." I felt the floor drop out from under me. "A what?" "She alleges that you can no longer manage your own affairs. She has initiated proceedings to become your legal guardian." I didn't know what to say. They handed me some papers, asked me to sign them as proof of receipt. As soon as I closed the door, my legs gave out and I collapsed onto the couch. My hands were shaking. I called Mr. Harrison. I sent him pictures of everything. He replied quickly, "This is what we feared, Carol. But you are not alone. We will respond. We have evidence." I didn't feel calm. I felt devastated. When Sandra returned that night, she walked in as if nothing had happened. She took off her shoes, greeted the children, glanced at me for a second with that masked face and said, "I see you got the notice." I didn't answer. "It's not personal, Mom. It's for the best. You'll be taken care of. You'll have everything you need. We just need to make this official." "Make what official, Sandra? Your greed? Your betrayal?" For the first time, my voice didn't tremble. I stood up and looked her straight in the eyes. "You have no right to do this to me. I am your mother. I raised you. And if you think you're going to steal my dignity with a signature, you are sorely mistaken." She took a step toward me. "You're overreacting. I just want to help you." "No," I said, my voice firm. "You want to control everything, but not anymore." She didn't speak to me that night. Not a single word. She locked herself in her room. The children slept restlessly. I felt afraid. Not for myself, for them, because they were in the middle of a war they didn't understand. The following days were like living in a minefield. Sandra stopped cooking, buying groceries, and helping around the house. She ignored me completely. She only focused on her documents, on her plans. But I had my own. With my lawyer's help, we put together our legal response. We brought witnesses. My neighbor from the 3rd floor, who saw me go out every day. The owner of the local market, who could attest that I did my own shopping. Even a doctor from the community health center who saw me every month and confirmed I had no cognitive impairment. Then came the hearing. On a Monday morning, I sat in family courtroom number 3, my heart in my throat. Sandra arrived with a young, smug lawyer. She looked at me as if I were a burden, a case file, a problem to be solved. She didn't greet me. She didn't even look down. The judge called for order. She read the petitions. She listened to both sides. I spoke from the heart. I told my life story. I talked about what I had done for my daughter, the sacrifices, the silences, the things I had given up. I showed my photos, my videos, my notebooks. Sandra spoke too. She lied. She said I confused the children's names, that I got lost in the street, that I forgot to turn off the stove. She claimed she had found medications taken incorrectly, unpaid bills, notes filled with nonsense. I didn't cry, but inside, every word she spoke was like a stone thrown by someone who was once my little girl. The judge listened to everything attentively. Then she retired to deliberate. The minutes felt like an eternity. When she returned, she said in a firm voice, "This court finds insufficient evidence to declare Mrs. Carol Hope Miller incompetent." I felt the air return to my lungs. On the contrary, the judge continued, "There is evidence of a pattern of manipulation and possible financial abuse on the part of the petitioner, her daughter. An investigation into this matter is recommended." Sandra turned pale. For the first time, her face showed fear. I didn't smile. It wasn't a moment for triumph. It was a moment for grief, because I understood that something between us was broken, something that could perhaps never be fixed. After the hearing, the silence at home grew even heavier. It wasn't a peaceful silence. It was one of rancor, of contained resentment, of words left unsaid that hung in the air like knives. Sandra stopped pretending. She no longer made an effort to maintain a facade of politeness. She looked at me with contempt, a mixture of hatred and shame, as if the judge's ruling had ripped off a mask she had worn for too long. For days, we didn't exchange a word. She ate in her room. She no longer left the kids with me as before. When I heard her on the phone, I noticed she spoke more quietly, as if she now had something to hide. Sometimes she cried locked in the bathroom. Other times she would leave without saying where she was going, and return with a lost look in her eyes. I didn't ask her anything. It wasn't out of fear anymore, but because I had understood that any attempt at connection would only be used as a weapon against me. The children were the only ones keeping any light in that dimming home. Sebastian sought me out every afternoon for help with his homework. Valerie slept with me some nights, saying she had nightmares. I knew they weren't dreams, but emotions she couldn't understand, fears she couldn't name. I could see it in the way she hugged me, as if afraid I would disappear too. One morning, while washing the breakfast dishes, I saw a white envelope on the table with a bank's logo. It wasn't addressed to me, but my name was listed at the bottom as co-borrower. I opened it with trembling hands. It was a foreclosure warning letter for non-payment of a mortgage. I didn't understand. I hadn't taken out a mortgage. I called the number on the letter. After giving my information, a monotonous voice explained that I was listed as a co-signer on a loan for over $150,000. My signature was on file. The property was located in a new subdivision on the outskirts of San Antonio. A house I had never seen. That wasn't mine. "And who is the primary borrower?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Sandra Miller," the voice said. I felt my soul leave my body. I had to sit down. My head was spinning. I closed my eyes, and for a moment felt that the trial, the pain, the entire process I had been through had been for nothing. Sandra had gone further. She had mortgaged a house using my name, and now the bank was warning me that if the payments weren't made, they could take legal action against me. I called Mr. Harrison. I told him everything. He asked me to come the next day with the letter, with all the papers I had. He told me this was no longer just emotional abuse. It was criminal fraud. We could sue her, press charges, but that would mean she'd go to jail. I said, my voice breaking, "Yes, Carol. If the forgery and misuse of your information are proven, she could face serious charges. She's my daughter," I whispered, more to myself than to him. "And you are her victim. This isn't about forgiveness anymore, Carol. It's about justice." I didn't sleep that night. I paced the apartment like a ghost. I would peek into the kids' room and see them sleeping peacefully, oblivious to everything. I wondered what would become of them if their mother ended up behind bars. What trauma they would carry. What resentments would be planted in their little hearts. The next day, as I was getting ready to leave for the lawyer's office, Sandra intercepted me in the living room. She wasn't wearing makeup. She had dark circles under her eyes. Her hair was messy. Her voice was dull. "Are you going to press charges?" she asked, point blank. I didn't answer. "Don't do this to me, Mom. I won't be able to handle it. I made a mistake, I know. I got desperate. I thought if it worked out, everything would be fixed. That we could live better. That you would never find out. But I did find out, Sandra. I found out, and you used me. I didn't know what else to do," she said, tears in her eyes. "I don't have anyone else. You were always my rock." You always saved me. I didn't know how to stop. I remained silent. I felt compassion, yes, but also rage. Because it wasn't the first time. And I knew that if I didn't set a real boundary, it wouldn't be the last. I can't live like this anymore, I finally said. I love you, you're my daughter, but I don't trust you anymore, and I can't keep paying for your mistakes. So, you're going to sink me? You sank yourself, Sandra. I'm just trying to stay afloat. I left without another word. At the office, the lawyer helped me draft a formal complaint. He explained the steps. He showed me how I could legally protect myself so Sandra couldn't continue to manipulate my data or my accounts. I felt like a stranger in my own life, as if I had gone from mother to plaintiff, from caregiver to legal victim. In the following days, Sandra changed. She stopped fighting, stopped yelling, but not out of remorse. I could see it in her eyes. It was fear of what could happen, fear of losing everything. She tried to be nice, cooked a meal once, asked me how I was. But it was too late. There was an irreparable chasm between us. One afternoon, the kids came home from school with a letter from the principal's office. Sandra hadn't paid their tuition. They were 3 months behind. If they didn't pay by the end of the month, they wouldn't be able to take their final exams. I didn't have that kind of money. What little I had left from Social Security was going to medication and food. Sandra locked herself in her room when I showed her the letter. She said nothing. She just lay on the bed and covered her head with a pillow. I spent the entire night wondering what to do. At dawn, I took my purse, looked in the old box where I kept my few remaining savings, and went to the bank. I paid the tuition. Not for her, for them, because I would not allow her mistakes to affect my grandchildren. They weren't to blame for any of this. When I got home, Sandra looked at me with shame. She didn't say thank you. She just hugged me for a few seconds. I didn't know if it was a hug of gratitude or goodbye. A week later, Sandra announced she was moving out. She didn't say it dramatically or with apologies. She said it like someone delivering inevitable news. It's all set. I'm moving with the kids to an apartment on the south side. It's smaller, but it's what we can afford. I was washing dishes when she said it. I turned slowly, my hands wet, unsure if I should feel relief or anguish. When? I asked. Saturday. I've already signed the lease. I made the deposit with my card. My own. She clarified the last part as if she wanted me to know that, for the first time in a long time, she wasn't using my money. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I just nodded and turned back to the sink. The suds stung my hands, as if even the soap knew this marked an end. I had trouble sleeping that night. I could hear the murmur of the children packing their things. Valerie asked if she could take her teddy bear, the one I had mended 3 times. Sebastian insisted on taking the scrapbook where he kept the drawings we made together. Listening to them made my chest ache. They were leaving. They were leaving with her, with their mother, with the woman who had betrayed me in every possible way, but who was still their mother. On Saturday morning, Sandra packed everything into black trash bags. She didn't hire movers. A friend of hers just came with an old pickup truck. They loaded it in silence. I sat in the living room, watching as each object they took left a void. The red tricycle Sebastian no longer used, the school backpacks, the storybooks I used to read to them before bed. Are you going to be all alone here? Valerie asked, her eyes shining. Yes, my love, but I'll be okay. And you can call me whenever you want. She hugged me tight. Her eyes full of tears she refused to let fall. Sebastian hugged me too, quicker, more restrained. He was at that age where starting to cry was embarrassing. Sandra said nothing. She just lowered her head and mumbled a thanks that got lost in the sound of footsteps toward the door. When they were gone, I closed the door slowly. I stood in front of it for several minutes, as if waiting for them to come back. Then I sat in the empty living room and cried. I cried like I hadn't cried in years. I cried until I fell asleep, curled up on the couch, my soul in pieces. The days passed, and the silence in the apartment became deafening. There were no more children's voices, no backpacks on the floor, no laughter at dinner time, only the echo of what was remained. At first, I struggled just to get out of bed. I would walk down the hall, touching the walls as if for support. I would look at the family photos in their old frames and feel like I didn't recognize anyone anymore. But slowly, something began to change. I started to clean more often, to reorganize the spaces. I opened the windows to let in the light. I went to the market by myself, taking my time, picking out fruit like I did when I was young. I started walking to church on Sundays again, something I hadn't done since Sandra and the kids moved in. I started sleeping through the night, without interruptions, without midnight cries. I found myself reading again. I pulled a book of poetry Robert had given me years ago from the shelf. I read aloud to myself, and found myself crying at a poem about time that never returns. One Tuesday afternoon, I got a call from the kids' school. I thought something bad had happened, but it was just to inform me that Valerie had written an essay about her favorite person, and she had said it was me. The principal, in a kind voice, told me that wasn't common, that most kids wrote about singers or TV characters. But your granddaughter wrote 2 pages about you, Mrs. Miller. She even drew a skillet with pancakes and a mug of coffee. I hung up with my heart in my throat. I sat on my bed and hugged a pillow like I was a little girl again. Later that day, I received another message. It was from Sandra. Thanks for everything. Despite everything, I'm sorry. I didn't reply. Not because I felt nothing, but because sometimes words aren't enough to heal certain wounds. Forgiveness, if it ever came, would have to be built on actions, not on phrases sent from a cell phone. The next day, I brought myself to do something I had been putting off for months. I went to the dentist to fix the tooth that had been hurting for so long. Afterward, I stopped at a fabric store and bought new material for the curtains. I changed the ones in the kids' old room too, even though they weren't there anymore. I did it for myself, for the good memory I wanted to preserve. A Friday, while I was having coffee in the plaza, I saw a woman walk by with 2 children. They looked like Valerie and Sebastian. For a second, my heart skipped a beat. But it wasn't them. Seeing them, however, made me realize something. Children grow up, phases change, life goes on. Sometimes we lose what we love most. But if we cling to the pain, we die with it. I started going to a knitting class at the community center. There, I met other women my age, many with similar stories. One had been kicked out by her sons. Another lived alone because her grandchildren were abroad. They all wore that mixture of strength and weariness on their faces that only comes with age. I felt like I was part of something again. One of them, Marisol, asked me one day if I was the lady from the family court case. At first I was embarrassed, but then I said yes, that was me. She hugged me and said, "Don't be ashamed, you are brave. So many of us let ourselves be walked all over. You didn't." I slept soundly that night. One Wednesday afternoon, while knitting on the patio with Marisol and 2 other ladies from the group, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated to answer. Lately, unknown numbers gave me a bit of anxiety, but something told me I should. I wiped my hands on my apron and swiped my finger across the screen. "Hello? Grandma." I recognized Valerie's voice immediately. My whole body shook. "My love, what's wrong? Are you okay?" "Yeah, I just wanted to hear your voice." I had to swallow hard to keep from crying. The last time we had spoken was a brief video call Sandra made weeks ago. Nothing more. The rest had been silence. "I wanted to hear your voice too, sweetie." There was a brief pause. "Can I come see you?" she asked, her voice timid. I wanted to say yes immediately, but I held back. I remembered what the lawyer had told me. I had to be careful. Sandra could still use anything against me. So I asked calmly, "Does your mom know you're calling me?" "She's at work. Sebastian is with her. I stayed with the neighbor because I had a headache, but I feel better now." "Valerie, my love, I want to see you too, but I don't want you to get in trouble." "I don't care. I miss you. Mom's been weird. She cries at night. She won't let me talk about you. She says you don't want to hear from us anymore." "That's not true. I will always love you both. So, can I come?" We arranged for her to come on Saturday. I made sure it was at a safe time, that someone would bring her and someone would pick her up. I called Mr. Harrison to let him know. He told me to document everything, to stay calm, and not to say anything that could be misinterpreted. Still, I couldn't help but feel like an excited child before a party. Saturday arrived, and the doorbell rang at noon. When I opened it, Valerie ran into my arms. She was carrying a small backpack and her inseparable teddy bear. I hugged her as if I hadn't seen her in years. In reality, it had only been weeks. But with grandchildren, time always hurts more. We spent the afternoon playing cards, baking cookies, listening to old Disney songs. She asked if I still watched my soap operas. I said yes, but that it wasn't the same without them. She showed me drawings she had made. One was of me, wearing a superhero cape. "You're like a Justice Grandma," she said, laughing. Inside, I wanted to cry. Not just because of the drawing, because of what that sentence implied. Children, even without understanding laws, courts, or fraud, grasp perfectly who is truly taking care of them. Around 6, there was a knock on the door. It was Sandra. My smile vanished. Valerie ran to hide behind me. "I just came to pick her up," Sandra said, avoiding my gaze. "I was expecting you," I replied, holding my ground. "Valerie, let's go," she ordered. My granddaughter didn't move. "I want to have a sleepover with Grandma, just for tonight." "No, we already talked about this." "Please." Sandra took a step forward, annoyed. "You put these ideas in her head," she said, finally looking at me. "You always have." "I don't need to put any ideas in her head," I responded calmly. "Sincere love doesn't need manipulation. Don't start." "I didn't start this, Sandra. You were the one who tried to take everything from me. But I still have my dignity. And she, if she wants to, can stay. She's 9 years old, not a baby." Valerie came closer, holding back tears. "Mom, just one night. I promise I'll be good," Sandra huffed. "Do whatever you want." And she left. I closed the door, my heart pounding a mile a minute. Valerie looked at me, scared. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, my love. What you did was listen to your heart, and that's never wrong." We slept in the same bed that night. I made her warm milk, read her a story, and tucked her in just like when she lived here. She asked me not to turn off the hallway light. She said that lately she'd been dreaming that I disappeared. "I will never disappear from your life," I promised her. "Even if Mom doesn't want you to. Even if the whole world doesn't want me to." In the morning, we had pancakes and hot cocoa for breakfast. We sang old songs, watered the plants on the balcony. She asked me to teach her how to sew. I made her a little pouch with her initial on it. She wanted to take it with her. When Sandra came back for her, she said nothing. She just held out her hand, and Valerie, this time, took it without resisting. But as she was leaving, she gave me a look that hurt more than any scream. "Thanks for everything, Grandma," she said firmly. "See you soon." When I closed the door, I knew something had shifted. It wasn't just a visit. It was the beginning of something. Maybe a crack was starting to form in the wall Sandra had built. That afternoon, I sat down with Michael Harrison. I told him everything. He spoke of possibilities, petitioning for official visitation rights, establishing protective orders if Sandra tried to keep me away again. But he also told me that sometimes things aren't resolved in a courtroom, but in the heart. And if there's a bridge, Carol, it might have to be built by the children, not by her. And what if that bridge breaks me more than it rebuilds me? Then you'll know that, at the very least, you tried. Weeks went by. Sandra didn't call, but the children started texting me. Little messages. A photo of Sebastian's drawing. An audio message from Valerie saying she'd won her chess tournament. I always answered with affection. No questions. No accusations. I knew I had to let things flow. That if I held on too tight, I would lose them. I started sewing more, selling some of my pieces at the weekend market. The ladies from the community center helped me. With the little money I earned, I felt useful, independent. I started rebuilding myself from the inside out, even if on the outside everything was the same. One day, I found a letter in my mailbox. Handwritten, in a child's script. It was from Valerie. "Grandma, I miss you so much. I know Mom is mad, but I'm not. I know you did the right thing. Thank you for taking care of us, for defending yourself. When I grow up, I want to be brave like you." I had to sit down. I could barely hold the paper. I read it over and over. It was proof that something had remained, that my story, as hard as it was, had left a seed of truth, of example, of steadfast love. That night, when I prayed, I no longer asked for Sandra to become the daughter she once was. I prayed that my grandchildren would not forget who I am. I prayed that one day, when they have their own children, they will understand what it means to protect with love, without giving up, even when it hurts. The thunderstorms started early that year. In San Antonio, September could bring heavy gray skies and thunder that rumbled down the avenues as if the heavens themselves wanted to weep. Every afternoon, I would sit by the window with a hot cup of tea in my hands, watching the drops slide down the glass, leaving streaks like the ones life had left on my skin. One of those afternoons, I received an unexpected call. It was the bank. Mrs. Carol Miller? Yes, this is she. We're calling to confirm that you authorized the full withdrawal of your next month's Social Security funds. Excuse me? The representative repeated the information. According to the system, someone had processed the transaction online. My account was empty. I hung up with a lump in my throat. I called Michael Harrison immediately. He told me not to go to the bank alone. We agreed to meet the next day. In the meantime, I checked my email, my messages, everything. I couldn't find any prior notification. I hadn't given out any passwords. But deep down, I already knew. There was only one person who ever had access to that information. I didn't sleep that night. I paced the apartment barefoot. My heart felt tight, like I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just the money. It was the confirmation that even after everything, Sandra hadn't changed. She hadn't stopped. Early in the morning, I met my lawyer and we went to the bank together. With the prior fraud complaint already on file from the mortgage attempt, the bank was more diligent. Upon reviewing the connection logs, they confirmed that the access came from the same IP address as previous transactions, all linked to a phone registered to Sandra Miller. We can proceed legally, the manager told me, looking seriously at the papers. This now qualifies as repeated theft and identity fraud. I left the bank shaking, not from fear, but from a mixture of rage and disillusionment. I felt tired of loving someone who seemed to have a bottomless pit instead of a soul, tired of justifying the unjustifiable, tired of protecting someone who only knew how to destroy. Do you want to go through with this, Carol? My lawyer asked. Are you really ready? I'm ready, I said, clutching my purse to my chest. Not for me anymore, for what's left of me. The charges were formally filed that week. Theft, fraud, identity theft. The process would be slow, but the damage was now documented. The law, at last, was starting to be on my side. I didn't tell the children. I didn't want them to hear it from me, but what I didn't say, the world did. 3 days later, Valerie called me, crying. Mom was screaming a lot. She threw things. She said you betrayed her, that you're going to put her in jail. My love, I tried to speak, but my voice broke. Is it true? The only thing that's true, my darling, is that I love you, and that I will never do anything to hurt you. But I also have to take care of myself. I'm not young anymore. I'm alone. And if I don't look out for myself, no one else will. But what if she fell silent. Valerie, you are not responsible for this. Don't carry a burden that isn't yours. I am okay, and you just need to worry about being a little girl. The call disconnected. She didn't call back all week. Neither did Sebastian, nor Sandra. But this silence wasn't the same as before. It was a tense silence, the kind that comes before the darkest storms. On Sunday afternoon, there was a knock on the door. When I opened it, I found 2 police officers and a legal notice. Sandra had responded to my lawsuit with a countersuit for harassment and defamation. Don't you worry, Mrs. Miller, one of the officers said. We know this is just a tactic, but we have to follow protocol. I sat on the couch, the document trembling in my hands. How dare she? How could she sink lower and lower? What kind of void was she carrying inside that she couldn't stop? Not even in front of the woman who brought her into the world. That night I prayed, but I didn't pray for myself. I prayed for her mind, her heart, for her children, for the damage she couldn't see, for the forgiveness she didn't know how to ask for. The next day, I went to the market and ran into Mrs. Gable, the woman who sells pies every Thursday. She greeted me as usual, but then she took my arm and said, I heard what happened. People talk. Some are judging you, but I admire you. Not all of us have the courage to say, enough is enough. I thanked her. I bought a slice of apple pie and walked home slowly, looking around as if seeing my city for the first time. And it was there, between the street vendors and the noise of motorcycles, that I understood. Sandra was no longer my daughter in the way I remembered her. She was a broken woman, full of rage, selfishness, and desperation. And as much as it hurt, I couldn't keep trying to save her if she didn't want to get out of the pit. At home, I called Michael Harrison. I told him we were moving forward with everything, that I was done with fear, that if this cost me my relationship with my grandchildren, I would have to trust that one day they would understand. The most important thing, he said, is that you don't feel alone. And for the first time, I didn't feel alone, because I had myself, and I had the Carol who had been silent for years, but who was now speaking with a firm voice. That evening, as I was making coffee, a notification popped up on my phone. It was a transfer. Someone had deposited $200 into my account via Zelle. The sender's note read, "From Valerie Miller." I rushed to check. It was real. I didn't understand how. I didn't understand why. I called. She didn't answer. I texted her, "Was this you, my love?" A few minutes later, a message came back. I sold my tablet. It was mine. It's not much, but I want to help. You're not alone. And there, finally, I cried. But not from sadness. I cried from love, from hope, from knowing that even in the midst of the deepest pain, something had bloomed. From that message from Valerie, something inside me changed forever. It wasn't just the money, though the gesture itself was immense. It was what it meant. A 9-year-old girl giving up her most prized possession to tell me, without words, "I'm with you." It was a silent declaration of love, an act of emotional resistance in an environment where she was forbidden to even speak my name. I replied with nothing more than an "I love you." I didn't want to get her into trouble. I knew that act could cause problems for her if Sandra found out. Still, I felt more supported than ever. Valerie was there, like a small lighthouse, a little flame in the middle of the dark sea I was navigating. The next few days were strangely quiet. No new threatening messages, no new court summons. I thought it was the calm before the storm, but it wasn't. This time, the silence was different. Not of vengeance, of exhaustion, as if even Sandra had reached her limit. One Friday afternoon, as I was embroidering a piece to sell at the Sunday fair, the doorbell rang. I thought it would be Marisol or someone from the community center. But when I opened the door, I was met with something I didn't expect. It was Sebastian. He was alone, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his hair disheveled, and his eyes red as if he'd been crying. I didn't know what to say. My body froze for a second. "Grandma, can I stay here tonight?" I didn't ask any questions. I didn't ask for explanations. I just hugged him. His little body was trembling like a leaf. I felt the world click back into place. For a moment, everything made sense. I made him hot chocolate. He drank it in silence, his hands clinging to the mug. Then he looked at me. "Mom got in a fight with her boss. She was yelling at him on the phone. She said it's all your fault, that you ruined her, that no one wants to help her. And what do you think? I think she ruined herself, and you just defended yourself." His voice sounded older, deeper than I remembered, as if he had aged years in those few weeks. I didn't want to hear her scream anymore. I didn't want to see her break things. That's why I came. "Does she know you're here?" "No." I climbed out the window. We live on the ground floor. My heart skipped a beat. "Sweetie, you can't do that. You could get hurt. You have to tell someone." "But if I told her, she wouldn't have let me come." I stroked his hair with a desperate tenderness. "We'll talk to her tomorrow. Together. I don't want you to get in trouble, but I'm not going to send you back if it means you'll be living in fear." We slept on the couch together that night, like when he was little. He fell asleep with his head on my arm. I didn't sleep. I just watched him, remembering his birth, his first tooth, the first time he said "Grandma." Early the next morning, Sandra appeared. She didn't knock. She pounded on the door. Hard. Insistent. Like a storm demanding to be let in. I opened it. She was a wreck. deep, dark circles under her eyes, her hair hastily tied back, an expression caught between desperation and contained rage. "Where is he?" "He's sleeping. He got here last night. Don't ask him how. Just listen to him. He's a child. He can't make his own decisions." "Then stop putting responsibilities on his shoulders that don't belong to him. You're brainwashing him." "I don't need to manipulate anyone. They feel. They see. They understand more than you think. Give him to me? Now." "No." I partially closed the door and leaned against the frame. My heart was racing, but my voice was steady. "If you want him to go with you, you're going to have to sit down with him, speak respectfully, and ask for his trust. I'm not going to force him. Not after everything he's been through." Sandra pushed past me, not violently, but with urgency. She came in and saw Sebastian on the couch. He sat up immediately. He didn't run. He just looked at her with a pain I had never seen in his eyes before. "Mom, why did you do this?" "Because I can't stand to see you like this anymore. You scare me. Valerie and I hide in the room when you scream. We don't sleep well. I just wanted some peace." Sandra was speechless. Suddenly, all her rage seemed to deflate. She sat down on the armchair. She wasn't crying, but her entire body was trembling. "I'm not a bad mother," she whispered. "No one said you were," I answered. "But you're lost, honey. So very lost. And you're dragging your children down with you." She lifted her gaze. "I don't know how to get out of this, Mom. I don't know how to go back. I have no money. I have no job. I have no one. You have your children, and they're telling you something. Listen to them." Sandra buried her face in her hands. The silence was long. Then, for the first time, she said what I never thought I'd hear. "Help me, please." The world seemed to stop, not because she was surrendering to me, but because at last Sandra was acknowledging her own abyss. I asked her to stay. I made her coffee. Sebastian went back to his room, giving me one last look of relief. Sandra and I talked for hours. We didn't solve anything concrete. But for the first time, she spoke without blame, without yelling, without lies. She told me about the loan, the fear, the loneliness. She asked me for time. She asked me not to withdraw the lawsuit just yet. That she would try to fix everything. "Not for you," she said. "For them." "Then do it," I replied. "But let this be the last time you have to promise. Will you ever forgive me? I will always love you, but forgiving you, that's something you're going to have to earn." In the following days, Sandra started coming to the apartment in the afternoons, unannounced. She didn't move in, didn't stay the night, but she would arrive with the kids, make them a snack, and sit quietly at the dining table like a shy guest. Her presence was awkward, as if she didn't know where to put her arms, where to look, what to say. I watched her without intervening, like one observes a wounded animal that lets itself be seen, but doesn't yet allow you to get close. One afternoon, while Valerie was finishing a puzzle on the floor and Sebastian was doing homework at the table, Sandra asked me to join her on the balcony to talk. "I went to the DA's office," she said, looking out at the street, avoiding my eyes. "I asked about the complaint. They explained how serious it is, that you could take it all the way if you wanted to. I said nothing. You could put me in prison, Mom." She was still waiting for a response that didn't come. I just held my cup of tea. "I don't know how to ask you not to. I don't know if I even have the right to ask." "You don't," I finally said calmly. Sandra closed her eyes, biting her lip. She nodded slowly, swallowing hard. "So, what do I do?" "Start over, but not with words, with actions. What you broke can't be fixed with tears. I have no way to pay you back for everything I stole. I don't even know how much it was." "I do. And how much was it?" "Too much. But the most expensive thing wasn't the money." Sandra covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook. It wasn't a dramatic cry, not one of those seeking immediate redemption. It was a dry, harsh, exhausted sob. "I'm scared, Mom. I've become someone I don't recognize, and I don't know if I can get out." "Then don't get out alone," I said gently. "But you have to do the walking. I'm not going to carry you anymore." She stayed longer that night. She played with the kids, washed the dishes. Valerie asked her to read her a story. Sebastian showed her a good grade on a math test, Sandra smiled with that clumsy expression of someone relearning how to be a mother. 2 weeks passed like this. Small gestures, tentative attempts. We avoided talking about the past. Every conversation was like walking on glass, but slowly the sharp edges began to dull. One afternoon she arrived with 2 envelopes. "I came to leave you this," she said. One contained a lottery ticket. "I don't know if it helps, but I bought it thinking of you. If we ever win, it's yours." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It was a childish gesture, but there was something sincere behind that folded piece of paper. The other envelope contained a notebook. On the first page, in trembling handwriting, Sandra had written, "Everything I owe you, in memory, in money, in time." The following pages were filled with dates, amounts, details. It was like a journal of debts, not just financial ones. The month she asked for money for the car was there. The day she took my card without permission. There were even small notes like, "That day I didn't defend you when Brenda's mom called you an old hag in front of everyone." I read a few pages and closed the notebook. Not out of anger, out of being overwhelmed. Vertigo. It was too much. "Why did you do this?" "Because you always remembered everything." I refused to remember. Now I understand that if I want to heal, I have to face it head on. And what do you expect me to do with this? Whatever you want. If you want to tear it up, that's fine. If you want to keep it, that's fine too. I just needed to give you something other than more words. I put the notebook in my bedroom dresser. I didn't touch it again that night. But something in me shifted. It wasn't forgiveness. It was a kind of truce. A pause in the war. A breath among the rubble. Shortly after, I received a call from my lawyer. The criminal proceedings could be suspended if I requested it. The case wouldn't be closed, but it would be put on hold as long as Sandra met certain conditions. Partial restitution, a signed commitment not to reoffend, monthly therapy sessions, and above all, never to touch my accounts or use my name in any transaction again. They gave me a few days to decide. I thought about it a lot. I prayed. I talked to Robert in silence, looking at his photo on the shelf. "What would you do, honey? Would you punish her or let her try to heal?" One afternoon, I sat across from Sandra with the document in hand. I read her every condition. She didn't interrupt. She agreed to everything. Then she signed. With a steady hand. "No excuses. I'll do it, Mom. I hope so. For you. For them. I don't have much left to lose. But you can still save yourself." She looked down, biting her lip. "I don't want you to forgive me now. I just want to have time so that one day you can do it without it hurting you." I didn't answer. That night, before sleeping, I went to my dresser, took out the debt notebook, and opened it. On the last page, written in more recent handwriting, was a single sentence. "I swear I'm really trying this time." I closed it slowly. I tucked it under my pillow. And for the first time in a long time, I slept without tears. 3 months passed. Sandra didn't ask me for money again. She met every condition of the agreement. She attended therapy every 2 weeks, sending me the receipts without my asking. She found a simple job at a downtown coffee shop. Nothing glamorous, but it was steady. She started to pay back what she owed, little by little, not just with cash, but with gestures. She'd bring me warm bread when she passed the bakery. She fixed the old hinges on my wardrobe, and one day she even surprised me by changing the shower curtain without being asked. The transformation wasn't magical, nor was it linear. There were days when her voice still sounded defensive, when her face filled with shadows when we talked about the past, but those days became fewer, as if, slowly, she was purging the poison that had built up in her chest. Valerie and Sebastian started staying over on weekends again. Sometimes Sandra would join us for dinner, sometimes not, but she always asked for permission before crossing the threshold. I noticed the effort in her movements, in her speech, in her silences. It hurt to see her like this, so different from the little girl with braids I had raised. But I also knew that this new version, broken and reassembled, was the only one that could be reborn with dignity. One Sunday morning, as I was making pancakes from scratch, Valerie hugged me around the waist and said something that was etched into my soul. "Grandma, thank you for not giving up on Mom." I stood still. Batter stuck to my fingers. My soul overflowed. I turned and hugged her tightly, holding back tears, because that sentence was everything. It was the recognition, the understanding, the reflection of years of pain finally turned into something fertile. That afternoon, Sandra asked if I would go to church with her. She wasn't religious, never had been, but she asked with a humility that needed no explanation. We walked slowly, in silence, both with shawls around our necks. We sat in the back pew, together. We didn't pray. We just breathed. After the service, we walked through the park like we used to when she was a teenager. She offered to buy me a lemon sorbet. She told me she'd applied for a job at a community library, that she dreamed of running reading workshops for single women, that maybe one day she would write a book about what we had been through. And what would you call it? I asked. I don't know. Maybe something like, The Mother Who Wouldn't Let Go. I smiled. I didn't say anything, but inside a part of me broke with tenderness. We returned home at sunset. Sebastian was watering the plants on the balcony. Valerie was reading a book on the couch. We walked in together. For the first time in years, the place felt like home again. Days later, I received an unexpected call from the DA's office. They informed me that, due to her good behavior, partial compliance with the agreement, and a favorable report from her therapist, I had the option to withdraw the complaint against Sandra completely. I didn't answer right away. I took a week to think about it. I reread every note in that journal she had given me. I looked again at Valerie's texts, Sebastian's drawings, the paid bills, the honest tears. The silences transformed into listening. And on a Monday morning, I signed the papers to withdraw the complaint. I didn't do it because I forgot. I did it because I learned to remember without hate. I did it because forgiveness, when it's real, doesn't erase what happened. It reframes it. That same day, Sandra hugged me tighter than ever before. I don't deserve this, she said. Maybe not, but I needed to do it. For me. So the pain would stop growing inside me. A few more weeks passed. One Sunday, as we were having coffee and pastries in the kitchen, she looked at me with the calmest eyes I had seen on her in years. Mom, I don't know when I became what I was. I don't either, I replied. But I know you're becoming something else now, and that's enough. Do you think you'll ever forgive me completely? I looked at her tenderly. I think I forgive you a little more each day. And if you keep going like this, one day it won't hurt me to remember. She nodded. She smiled. And finally, she cried. Not as a victim, not as an aggressor, but as a daughter. A daughter who finally understood what a mother was worth. That night, when I went to bed, I prayed. But this time, I didn't ask for anything. I just gave thanks. I was thankful I had endured. Thankful I hadn't signed papers out of fear. Thankful I had said no when it was easier to surrender. I was thankful I had chosen myself after so many years of always putting myself last. Because there are battles only a mother can fight. But there are also battles that are only won when a mother learns that not everything is solved by loving without limits, but by loving herself too. Today, I write these words not from the pain, but from the scar. A scar that aches, yes, but it no longer bleeds. A life lesson. There is a love so great it can hold an entire family together. But if that love forgets itself, it stops being a strength and becomes self-abandonment. Loving doesn't mean allowing everything. Loving is also setting boundaries. Saying enough can also be an act of love, especially when we do it so we don't disappear inside the sacrifice. Sometimes the bravest thing a mother can do is not to forgive, but to choose to respect herself first. If this story touched your heart, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, so this message can reach someone who needs to hear it today.